Welcome to this episode of the Sports Detective Podcast Show. My name is James Williams, and today Joel Embiid is soft. What are we talking about? Well, Joel Embiid is going to miss the first two games to start the season. It's kind of unclear when he's actually going to make his regular season debut. The NBA is investigating it because it doesn't seem like it's an injury, and it's kind of odd to start off the season resting the first few games is kind of an odd thing when, like, he didn't get, there's not a specific injury or something that we can point to. And Joel Embiid also said publicly that, like, hey, I'm not going to be playing back-to-backs this year. And this has got a lot of media pushback, especially from the old heads of the media, like a Shaquille O'Neal, like Charles Barkley, who were on TNT Tuesday and Thursday night ripping Joel Embiid and basically saying, like, come on, man. Like, Charles Barkley, I know, said, like, come on, man, you just signed like $190 million extension and you're coming out and saying you can't play back-to-backs. Like, what's the deal here? And then Shaq went as far as to say on his podcast, he was talking about Joel Embiid and him not playing back-to-backs, and went as far as to call him soft. We're going to go ahead and listen to Shaq talk about Joel Embiid here for about 50 seconds. Then we'll come back on the other side and talk about Joel Embiid and the Sixers right now.
You have to want to be that guy. And with his statements the other day, I don't think Joel wants to be that guy. I actually want him to take it personal. Like, you can't come out before the season and say, I'm not playing back-to-back. Say it again. Spell it. S-O-F, capital T. A shout out to you guys. I wanted all the smoke. I'm in L.A. It ain't Magic City no more. I want it. Bring it to me. So when he came out and said, I'm not playing back-to-back, I thought about it first. I'm like, you don't get double-teamed. You don't get triple-teamed. Or you pick and pop. Why are you tired? Until he steps up and takes that responsibility and puts the city and the team on his back. Because he can do it. Like, he got pissed off one time last year. How many he dropped? 70 on
the Spurs.
So if you can drop 70 when you're pissed off, you can average 40.
He looked great in the Olympics against Jokic too.
He did.
All right, so let's talk about this a little bit here. So the point of this video isn't whether to not discuss Joel Embiid. Is he soft or not? I didn't play in the NBA. I didn't play in a basketball game that anyone ever cared about. That is not the point here today. And you're talking about Shaq and his kind of like diagnosis of basketball. Sometimes I'm not necessarily always on the same page of it as him. And we've, criticized Shaq sometimes on the show for some of his takes. But I will say this about the 76ers and this Joel Embiid situation, which is something I have not heard anyone really articulate on national TV well enough to my liking. And they've kind of been focusing on, ripping Joel Embiid for not playing for the start of the season, rather than actually talking about him in this like huge load management strategy that the Sixers are going to be implementing this year, what that actually means for the long-term effect of the 76ers so far this season. This is not a good thing that the 76ers are doing this. Joel Embiid, the 76ers basically have like an entirely new team this year. Their returning players are Embiid, Maxey, Kelly Oubre, and Kyle Lowry, who is like washed right now. Everybody else is new. Eric Gordon's new. Caleb Martin's new. Yabusele's new. Andre Drummond, I know, was on the team a few years ago, but he's new. Paul George is new. And you're implementing like new players that need to build and cultivate chemistry with each other, because chemistry on a basketball court is extremely important. And I think that's something that when we talk about the NBA, I think it's something that we completely do not factor in. I think we saw it the very first game opening night where the Celtics had this incredible chemistry. They've all been playing together for a few years now. And then the Knicks had a whole new team of guys that had never been on the same basketball court together or had only been, in preseason together. And you saw the Celtics absolutely knock their doors off. Chemistry matters. Building chemistry matters. This, in a way, this really reminds me of the Kawhi Leonard Los Angeles Clippers, where the idea of like Kawhi, when he got traded to Toronto, after that season, we all thought like, hey, load management is like the best thing ever. And that was a completely different circumstance that we had ever seen before, where Toronto knew Kawhi had an expiring contract. This is a team that had gotten close, had won a bunch of games, but they had a lot of playoff limitations with their best players. And they knew to have the best version of themselves, they needed this, top 5 caliber player, which was Kawhi. And the other guys on that team had absolutely perfect chemistry. And they were actually able, I think they had like a comparable record without Kawhi in the regular season than they did with Kawhi. And then that even showed up the next year where that team without Kawhi, without doing any sort of thing to like replace him, ended up being the 4 seed, I believe, and then won one round in the playoffs. And I think they win either 6 or 7 games against the Celtics in the bubble. But that team was completely different where they were trying to appease Kawhi and they wanted to do everything to make him happy. And the Raptors were in a situation where all those players were cool with Kawhi only playing like 62 games or whatever he did. Then Kawhi goes to the Clippers and Kawhi thinks everything's just going to be like the same exact story as it was with the Raptors. But with the Clippers, you had all these guys or a bunch of these guys that had been together that had, some success, were kind of like a overachieving team, making the I don't think we had the plan at that point. They were making like the 7-8 seed and they were playing against the Warriors. I think they took 2 games from the 19 Warriors. And there's a bunch of guys on that team that had a growing animosity towards Kawhi because they're like, dude, you think you can just like sit out like 20, 30 games a year? I'm out here busting my butt. I'm making like a quarter of the salary, if that in some cases, of what you're making. And I'm playing 76, 78 games. And if you go back to the 2019-2020 Clippers, I think people forget that like everyone, when Kawhi and Paul George went there, everyone was like, oh my God, the Clippers are winning the title this year and it's Kawhi's world. And they did not care about the regular season and they were basically taking it for granted. And then they got knocked out of the playoffs because the team had absolutely no chemistry. If you look at that, the Clippers, the entire time that Kawhi was there, even until now, they never ever were able to build team chemistry because Kawhi was always in and out of the lineup and people never knew what was going on. And that's why Paul George and Kawhi, like the theory of them, the best case scenario of Kawhi and Paul George is like what Tatum and Brown are. But they never got to actualize their full potential. And I think that's a huge worry right here now with the 76ers. I'm recording this right now, and they're already 0-2, and Joel Embiid and Paul George have missed the first 2 games. Like, this isn't a situation like the Raptors where if Embiid gets to miss like 30 games this year, they're going to go 20-10 in those games. They might go 10-20. They might be worse than that. And you're telling me Paul George is injured? Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are both injury prone. Excuse me, not Kawhi Leonard. Paul George and Kawhi Leonard also is injury prone, but Paul George and Joel Embiid are injury prone. You're just telling this just does not spell good for them in their championship props to start the season. What team has ever won the NBA championship having their 2 best players that had never played a dribble with each other in a game that mattered miss the first, I don't know how many games they're going to miss, 3 games, 4 games, 5 games? What team has ever won the championship like this? Guys, this team is not a serious title contender. They're going to have a bunch of chemistry issues trying to build the chemistry. Because again, there have a bunch of guys that you're implementing this team that have never played with each other before, and you're going to be going up against all these other teams in the East, where the East isn't that deep, but it's really top heavy. You have the Knicks that are going to be building chemistry this year. You're going to have the Pacers that are going to be building on chemistry from last year. You're going to have the Celtics that have this amazing chemistry built up over years now. You have the Milwaukee Bucks with Dame and Giannis that are going to be working on building chemistry. There is a lot of teams that are in your way that are going to have better chemistry than you guys. And I don't think this load management strategy is going to work. Again, I'm not saying Joel Embiid should play 82 games, 72 games, but if this really is to keep him out for the first 2, 3, 4, whatever games of the season is really a load management thing, and Joel Embiid isn't like injured or anything right now, I just don't think it's going to work. I think this is a poor way to approach it. And I think you're going to run into a problem where some players are going to have an animosity towards Joel Embiid, where he did just sign, as Charles Barkley brought up on the broadcast Thursday evening, he did just sign a 3-year, $190 million extension. Some of these guys that are on this team are playing for the minimum, and they're going to be having to play like 75 plus games. And Joel Embiid is like, it's like with Kawhi, it's like you can take him off the team and the team still can like succeed to a certain degree. But with Joel, how he plays the game, when he's in, everything revolves around him, for better and worse at times, mostly for better, because he's an insanely good player. And this just does not spell good for me when we're talking about the Sixers and their prospects this year. Again, what team has had their two best players miss the start of the season that have always had injury issues in their career, went on a long playoff run? I don't know if you can name one. So there you have it, guys. That's going to do it for this episode here today. If you liked what you saw here today, please subscribe. That is the number one thing to do to help support this channel and help us grow. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video here today. Please leave a comment on what you think about the situation with Joel Embiid and what you thought about the video. And please go ahead and check out other videos on Sports Detective Podcast channel page. There's probably some that you'll like. We talk NBA. We're getting ready to talk college hoops when that starts. We're talking NFL. We're talking college football. We just talk about stories like this that we find very interesting. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.